You can holler, you can applaud, you can scream, you can do anything you want. I can't hear you anyway.
I'm Kyler Bingham, and you're listening to the Salt Lake Dirt Podcast. On today's episode, we are discussing a novel that came out about 20 years ago. And this year, 2020, it is finally getting the audiobook release that it deserves. I'm referring to the novel Sarah by JT LeRoy. Laura Albert is the author. So Laura joins us, as well as other people who were involved in the making and the production of the audiobook. So we're going to get to know Winsome, Nicole, Bryan, and Jayme, who had a huge part in creating this beautiful audiobook. So I want to thank all five of them for taking the time to talk with us. It was such a treat. Also, it should be noted that Laura's other work, The Heart is Deceitful Above All Things, comes out in February on audiobook, also through Blackstone. So keep an eye out for that. Now, when we started our Zoom call the other night, the conversation just kind of started, and I failed to hit record, but there was such a cool story that Laura was telling before we actually officially started. I had to hit record, and hopefully our listeners will make sense of it. I think you'll get what's going on pretty quickly, but I couldn't help myself. Such an incredible story. Okay, without further ado, we are going to talk to Laura Albert, as well as four other people that were involved in the making of the audiobook Sarah.
But I would make it crazier. I would stretch it out. I would take the truth that they usually had something correct, but then something wrong. So I wouldn't say, oh, that's crazy, but I would make it more wild, right? So it would kind of confuse the whole scent, you know?
I love it.
I like that phrase, confuse the scent, because it really gives you this sense of the beagles hunting the fox.
Oh, it would happen all the time. I would have someone come up to me and say, well, I heard that JT was so-and-so and blah, blah. And I would sometimes go right at it and say, well, I'm JT. And like someone once said, I remember it was Gary, Indiana, at the choral room party. And he comes up to me. And it's funny because he was someone who I worshiped as a kid in the punk scene, and actually made a tape where I was interviewing other kids who were in foster care with me, who had been in and out of institutions, because he was writing about that. And I never sent the tape to him. I kept it, but it was the idea that somebody cared and could do something. So it was my way to try to find a workaround, which was actually what my writing was, which was this elaborate workaround, but for not being heard. But he came to me and he said, well, I heard that JT's really the cousin of Savannah and is this really fat or morbidly obese, woman, mom or something. And I said, well, I'm JT LeRoy and I'm not morbidly obese. And it just confused him.
I love
and so it was sort of like that. I mean, they would have part of the story, but part of it would be wrong. And I just thought, you just kind of like, yeah, well, I am the CIA and blah 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 blah. Anyway, so hi everyone. Should we begin our meeting today? Who's going to read the minutes?
Let's go ahead and start. And it's a pretty loose podcast, so I feel like I'm like at an early Thanksgiving Zoom call right now with a bunch of relatives I haven't met yet. So let's go ahead and go around the room. I'll start with me. I'm Kyler Bingham, the host of the Salt Lake Dirt Podcast, and I am absolutely thrilled to have the people who are behind the audiobook of one of my favorite books of all time, Sarah by JT LeRoy, Laura Albert. So maybe we could all just go around, and I'm in Salt Lake City, hence the name Salt Lake Dirt. If you could just go around, say who you are, where you are located and what was your involvement with the audiobook of Sarah.
All right, I'll do that. I'm Laura Albert. I'm the culprit, as the New York Times once put it. That I'm the author who wrote the fiction book Sarah. And thank you so much for that, Kyler. That's lovely. And yeah, I wrote Sarah under the pseudonym JT LeRoy.
Great.
I'm Winsome Brown. I was lucky enough to be chosen as the narrator of the audiobook of Sarah, and I live in New York City.
Excellent.
And you look stunning.
Thank you. I put on my lipstick.
You look
I put
beautiful.
on my lipstick so that everyone who's listening to this podcast
I can
could-
we can
could
all vouch for
imagine
that. Excellent.
I'm Nicole.
Kyler, sorry, go on.
Oh dear. I'm Nicole Gagne. I edit with Laura and work with her on her writing. I was also co-producer of the audiobook of Sarah and have been co-producing the audiobook of The Heart is Deceitful Above All Things, which is nearing completion now. I'm in San Francisco as well.
Great. Excellent.
Hi, I am Jayme Mattler, and hi. I was the engineer / director on Sarah, and I live in Brooklyn.
I'm Bryan Barney, audio producer for Blackstone Publishing, and my job here was to bring all of these lovely people together.
And I have to say, they've all had a very good sense of humor. And we're very patient and have had to have a trauma-informed approach to making an audiobook.
Well, so here I hold it right here. I love that I was able to get a hard copy of this from Blackstone. Maybe I could just start. So I was, like I said, Sarah's, that's been one of my favorite books for the last few years. I'm kind of late to the game. So I think I have, in a way, an advantage that when I got Sarah, I knew all about the JT LeRoy stuff. So I just kind of like, okay. And then I could just focus on the good writing that was before me. And there was no issue with who really wrote it and who was this person and yada, yada, yada. I love that I could just read it from a pure sense. And getting the audiobook, I was just surprised that there hadn't been an audio version of it until now. But I think it was absolutely well worth the wait. I loved listening to this, and Winsome, such an incredible job.
Thank you.
It just brought me in to the story so much more, and gave it to me like so much more depth and heart, and I love it. And it's something I'm gonna come back to again and again. So what a beautiful gift for Laura Albert and JT LeRoy fans out there. So thank you, everyone. But yeah, so I guess I want to ask, why is this just becoming an audiobook now in 2020?
Because you have to wait. You have to wait for the right moment. It has to be God's will, not your will, and God to me is that there's a something higher. I don't know what that is. I haven't quite found it, like a way to express it. I tried to do it. Bloomsbury, which was the original publisher of the JT book, set me up. We had a home studio, and they were ready to do it. They were going to pay me to do it. We had everything here, Pro Tools, and I started recording it, and it just was not right. I just could not do it. And people were upset. There was a demand for it, but I was like, my inner sense of timing, I do feel like I have this. Sometimes I have the wisdom to listen to it, and sometimes I rebel. But it was like, this is not correct. It will be the correct time, and then you will know, and the correct person will be there. So, and then I went to a strip club, and I met Winsome.
Pastries and a G-string. I was there, showing it all, saying, "Pick me."
Thank God I was with Bryan and Jayme, because they saw the opportunity.
That's where Laura and I met. She bought a pack of cigarettes from me, I was walking up and down.
This is literary, right?
Yeah.
Trying to keep it up to standard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love that it because I never really listened to audiobooks, in the past. So probably just the last couple of years I got Audible, and I think like a lot of people, maybe we weren't really aware of the art that goes behind an audiobook. And I certainly don't know to the extent of what that is, but I know when I hear a bad audiobook and that stands out. And this was, like I said, just such a great piece. When was this recorded? Like when you guys all met, you came together. I'm assuming pre-pandemic, you were able to get this project off the ground.
I can tell you the dates. It was December 19th and 20th of 2019. And I know this because the 20th of December is my mother's birthday. And to me, this is Winsome speaking, to be chosen to do this was really a singular honor and incredibly meaningful for me. I've always wanted to be reading literature for people. And it's something that I do, privately in my home and to my family and stuff. And this book, with its blend of incredibly complex and rich poetry and emotions and humor, off the hook humor, as well as devastating human experience, was like basically the most full meal that one could ever hope to jump into as an audiobook narrator. And for me, there was something, it's all about the mother and the relationship of the narrator and the mother, and of JT and the mother of Sarah. And so the fact that it was recorded on my mother's birthday, and my mother died in 2012. And so her birthday is a day of connection, and also the realization of loss as well, the kind of commemoration of something incredibly deep and beautiful. And so the fact that we recorded it on that day that we finished it on that day felt incredibly powerful to me. So that's why I remember the exact days.
That's beautiful. So how about so Bryan and Jayme, I'm curious how Blackstone came to be involved in the project. It sounds like the next book is coming out within a matter of months as well. So you're releasing pretty much the full catalog here.
Yeah, we were fortunate enough to have had a previous relationship with Bill Clegg, who is Laura's literary agent, and he when this book came up for renewal, he was able to offer it to us, and we jumped on it right away because it was exciting to be the company who was going to put this out in audio for the first time.
That's great. Jayme, excuse my ignorance, but I'm just like, what, as a producer or being involved in the production element of an audiobook, what are the biggest challenges or the things you're trying to strive for to get a great quality audiobook?
Well, Winsome made it really easy.
Mm.
So, Bryan's the producer and I'm the director. So I'm the person who works with the actors in studio. And part of my job is reading along to make sure that they don't make mistakes. They're going to, just making sure that we fix them. Part of my job is engineering. So just hitting all the buttons and saying we're rolling. And then the other job is sort of the nebulous aspect of art, which is directing. And, everybody has a different approach to that. And my approach can change depending on who I'm working with. You never quite know how it's going to be when you have someone who's a first-time narrator come in. Even when they're an accomplished actor, there's sort of a question of like, what are the parameters of this art form? How is it done? And so I remember Winsome and I sitting down and just sort of having a chat about, what is this story about? What are these characters about? How does an audiobook sound? What is this art form? And basically she got in the booth and made me realize that conversation was unnecessary. I think of myself as I jokingly say that I'm Cookie Monster's assistant, where Cookie Monster is eating all the cookies, and my job is to catch all the crumbs and go, Cookie Monster, you missed this crumb. And Cookie Monster says, yes, crumb, and throws it back in their mouth. So that's about it. My job is to let the actor shine and make sure that nothing, no crumbs fall.
But I'll say this is Laura, that's underselling the capacity for, I mean, because I recorded a story there. I recorded, no, what did I record? Nicole, what did I record?
You did balloons, hon.
Oh, balloons, right. The first one I wrote. So I really expected kind of I was in a bunch of different studios when we were doing, what is it called? AR for the documentary, the JT LeRoy story. Is it called AR? When you're doing voice stuff.
Oh, ADR.
ADR, yeah. And even some reading some stories. And I was used to it just being kind of like very formal, kind of no connection. Even in the Vice studios, it was just very kind of, and I was like, okay, I'm going to be very professional. I'm going to be very professional. I'm going to keep my tail tucked in. My ears are hidden. And I was just so struck by the warmth of Bryan. And then Jayme, it's like the warmth, and you feel held. And that, I think, depending on the work, you might not need that. And depending on the person who's used to kind of like unzipping, using the urinal, putting it back, going away. But this was different. This was more, it's emotional and it's heavy, and feeling that there's someone like locking in with you. It's not just catching crumbs, it's holding you and making a safe space, and you feel that, okay, I can make a mistake, I can be present with this, I can be vulnerable here. That's rare. And that was really something that was created and very palpable.
That's great. So, I mean, I guess you kind of answered my next question, but I'm curious. So this is directed towards Nicole and Laura. Having someone read words that you have been so painstakingly a part of, personally, is that I mean, hopefully not a dumb question, but is that a challenge, or are you able to just let go and let the artist take it and run with it from there?
Well, if it's Winsome Brown reading it, then you're home free.
Aww, thanks, Nicole.
I mean, you listen to her read Sarah, and it's like watching a bird in flight, or like watching a thoroughbred run. This is what someone is born to do. And the feeling of being, oh, now you can relax. Now you can let down your guard and everything. That's the effect there. And of course, Winsome also participates in the other audiobook that we've done as well, because, hey, but there was never any question. It was, once we knew it was in the right hands, you could just sit back and marvel at it.
Right.
Which is what people do ever since now. Now the world can do it.
I love it. So with the next one, with the Heart is Deceitful, that's several different narrators that you have a part of that project. Yes,
we decided to really go to town and bring in a whole slew of people. This is very typical for an audiobook, but the stories deserved it, and we brought in a beautiful range of folks to read it. And I don't want to stiff any of the names, so I'm going to call them up on a file right now. Laura, why don't you tell them a little bit more about what we're doing with that while I call up that file?
Well, Blackstone has been very indulgent, very patient, very loving. Yes. I'm waiting to get the cease and desist any day from Bryan. Sorry. Where it's the idea. Well, for me, it was JT shouldn't be just me, because it wasn't. And JT kind of became everybody. Like, everybody should have their 5 minutes of being JT. And I think bringing people who were part of my past, who had some connection to the work, and we have a very diverse, eclectic group, and that's absolutely beautiful. Many of our readers are people who wrote to me, or I read an interview where they said that they became a writer because of Sarah or because of The Heart is Deceitful, and now they're noted writers. And of course the invitation was, well, it was just such a coincidence. Would you like to read? Like, what's Paul's name?
Paul Mendez is a perfect example, the author of Rainbow Milk, who's in London. And he reads one of the pieces now in The Heart is Deceitful Above All Things. It's a very interesting group because there's actors, there are musical people, there are writers, and from an array of backgrounds and different personalities too, which bring the whole thing to life. Let me also stop for a second and just say that the precedent for this was that we brought in the artist and filmmaker Leela Dare to read on the Sarah audiobook, because Billy Corgan, the musician, had written a special foreword for that issue, the reissue of the book, and we wanted to include that on the audiobook. And Lee was kind enough to do a beautiful reading of Billy's words for that, and set the stage for Winsome's tour de force.
Oh, we should have had Lee on this. Oh dear.
What's the matter, huh?
Oh, I realized we should have had Lee on this, dude.
Well, we could say great things about them right now, so let's go that direction.
Okay. Yeah, Lee rocked.
And Lee was an absolute pleasure to work with and correspond with.
Do you want me to see if I can get him on? I mean, he's pretty, I can send
His
it to him.
schedule is crazy, but you might be able to try to call, dear. I can talk about some of the other folks in the meantime.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Let me see. We have the writer Alyssa Bennett is reading. So is Winsome, of course. Christelle De Castro, the artist. Laura Desiree, the media personality. Actress Karis Dorsey. Leila Hiyani, the makeup artist. John Hawkes, the actor. Michael Imperioli, Donovan Leitch. Shirley Manson from Garbage. The director Darnell Martin. Actress Julie Mintz, her sister Libby Mintz, the actor Daniel Newman, musician Lawrence Rothman, the writer Pamela Sneed, the actress Robin Weigert. All of them are participating in this. Plus, there's Laura reading as JT LeRoy, and Jeff Feuerzeig is reading the foreword that he wrote for the reissue of The Heart. Wow,
you have like everyone in there.
Yeah,
that's quite the list.
There may be one or two more people before the dust all settles too. This is just being finalized right now. But yes, and
I can't wait for that cast party.
That's going to be the Zoom of all time. It's going to be a beehive with all the little honeycombs of faces and that. But we're going to do a big event for that when that comes out, and that will be a Sarah party as well. And we're looking towards.
We're doing it at Brian's house, right, Brian?
He wants to break the lease, so he's asked us all to come.
So when can we
Absolutely.
When can we listen to this? When can we listen to The Heart is Deceitful?
Brian, we're looking really towards a February release at this point. We're on schedule for that, aren't we?
We are on schedule for a February 2nd release, 2021.
Yeah, we should have the meeting right now about where we're at. I am. It was really wonderful with Winsome and everything that I was kind of with JT. It's like I was being Speedy, which was sort of like the handler and the manager. And what was so wonderful is just really like what Nicole said, just letting it go. And it was really beautiful. There were a couple of things where we listened to it, and Nicole, do you remember those where it was
Go on a little bit, dear. How do you mean?
I'm trying to remember, like the conversation, like with the mom voice or something.
In Sarah or in The Heart now?
It's with Sarah, where we spoke to Winsome.
Well, we did a lot of speaking with Winsome as she was preparing it. She was kind enough to send us audio excerpts about how she was going at it and discuss the different voices and everything. And it was really just it was very simple and direct. Winsome knew what she was doing.
It was very easy. It was
Very
just
easy.
it was just completely like it's almost like, you know, when you see someone working with an expert ballerina and you're just like, can you just move your hand just that little tiny touch, and then it's done, you know.
When I first heard Winsome doing the voice of Sarah, the little hairs went up on the back of my neck. It was so startling because she caught that bray and that quality that that character has to have. And indeed, Sarah is a minor character in Sarah, but she brought her just completely vividly to life, and that's why we knew it was going to be an epic experience to hear the novel done that way.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's incredible. When I listen to it, same thing. It just like, you know, something I've read several times over the last few years, and to hear it done so well, and it was just, I couldn't have hoped for a better representation of the work. So I can't, you know, sing your praises enough. Laura, I did have a question. So when I heard that there was going to be an audiobook, I just naturally, my brain gravitated towards you being the one who would read it. Was that something you were interested in at the beginning, or
No, I knew what it. I think it was really great that I had that experience. Like I said, trying to do it, because I realized how not. It's really hard. It's kind of there are so many art forms where people know they can't do that. They can't do it. Like, you wouldn't go to a ballet and say, oh, I can do that. You wouldn't, you know, go to eat this like amazing meal. Very few people would think, oh, I could do that. A museum, and unless, you know, modern art, you might say my 3-year-old can do that, you know. But I think writing is something that a lot of people do believe that they can have a bestseller too. Of course I can do that. They have that mirage, you know, that kind of fantasy. And I think it's the same thing with an audio book. They don't understand how hard it is. Not to change words, right? That's just something, Jayme, I don't even know how you handle that, but the little things of, you think you read the word, but you changed it, right? And having to, I mean, it's like if you grew up with radio, right? I grew up, my dad was a big radio fan, and I had the Kellogg Superman records, so albums of the old Superman radio broadcasts. And I would collect these things, and I grew up with radio and storytelling on radio and what a voice can do. And I knew that I might give good telephone, but that's very different from reading a story and words already written and conveying them. And when I met Winsome, it's funny because I was looking for, as like the Cinderella, I had the shoe and I needed to find the foot. And I have a habit of wanting to jam like a 12-inch foot into a 4-inch shoe. And it was like, it was like, let's get this foot in there. But I finally backed off, and I was like, okay, the right foot's gonna, I'm sorry, Winsome, I'm not calling you a foot. But you are kind of like that. You are kind of like
foot long any day, Laura.
that Monty Python foot, that, you know.
Right. We have a foot fetish, so it's a compliment.
Yeah.
It's a heavy lift. To read a novel like that in an audiobook, period, is a heavy lift. I know Jayme and Bryan can tell you all sorts of stories about how difficult it is. And something like Sarah is deceptive because it's relatively short and it's so direct, and it has a tone and a special quality. And you think, well, once you lock into the groove, you're all set. And that's true enough. But to get through it page by page, especially with the changes in emotion and tone, is extremely difficult. And so, I mean, again, what Winsome did is a tour de force. And our friends at Blackstone, again, can tell you just how tricky it is to try to do an audiobook of any kind of material, even if it's fairly straightforward and not about deep emotional things.
Nicole, I just want to jump in for a second and describe a little bit our process of working together, because Nicole and I did something that I think is quite unusual in recording an audiobook, which is that I kind of rehearsed with her beforehand. As she said, I did send some kind of excerpts of here's what I'm thinking of, or here's a tune I'm thinking of for one of the hymns, that kind of thing. But I, who come from, you know, theater and film and television and have done a lot of solo performances, so I am accustomed to holding a lot of characters in one place. That's something that I love to do. And yet this is a new medium, and it's a closer medium with the microphone being right there and you being the voice in the audience's ear. Having somebody guide me through that, so that when I came to work with Jayme in the room, in the booth, I had a sense of where I wanted to go and how to get there. And then she and also Bryan could help me to get there even, you know, more precisely and technically on the day. But that work with Nicole was a real gift. And I don't think that it's something that many narrators have the opportunity to do, which is to essentially work right side by side with the author as represented in her right-hand woman. So I wasn't working with Laura because having it through Nicole almost gave a bit more air to the process, but by working with Nicole, I was working with Laura. And so I knew that I was bringing the author's words to life in a way that would please Laura. And that, I mean, the whole thing seemed quite sacred to me, to have met her and then to be chosen for this, you know, seminal work, and to bring her voice in this complex kind of, there's the narrator, there's the book itself, and then there's the story around the book of Laura and her relation to JT and JT's relation to the world and the film author and all of that. So I was conscious of all of these different pieces, and Nicole so generously gave her time to help me go in there and feel confident. And that made the process with Jayme and with Bryan just such a joy. So anyway, this was really a long-winded toast to Nicole and say thank you. You're the best.
Yeah, absolutely. That Nicole has this theater background, and the plug-in. I think that for me, this is Laura, to be able to trust, it's like the circuit, you know. I mean, I squeeze that baby out. Why don't you do your expertise? And I believe that Nicole was able to hold it and impart the way she did, even in preparing it for the new drafts of the books, going through it each word to make sure, like savoring it. It's almost like My Fair Lady being able to know the rain in Spain, taking each word, the diction, where it's too convoluted for me. So that was just so beautiful, your connection and your relationship, because you do both come from theater.
I was going to say that I had the opportunity to prepare the text of Sarah for the reissue that HarperCollins did, and this is, of course, the edition that Winsome read. So I actually had the material pretty much at my fingertips and was able to make the connections that she would ask me about certain people with it. But I mean, Jimmy Stewart used to say that a great theater director, if they give you direction, you'll step 6 inches, maybe a full foot to the right if they ask you to, and that's clearly what it really was with Winsome, for goodness sake. It was our confidence that was being built in all of the discussions that we had. Sure, I could see some of the connections and help to put things into a bigger perspective for her. And as soon as that was clear, all you had to do was listen. It was just what Winsome does cannot be taught. This is a gift that a person has naturally, to be able to bring emotion to life like this, and step back herself and let that come out for people to be able almost to touch with their fingertips. That is something you cannot teach a person to do. That is a natural gift, and she has.
Thank you, Laura. Oh, thank you, Nicole. Sorry, I didn't.
I got
And
it
Laura
too.
That's great.
And again, that we were lucky that we found a home in Blackstone, a place that I'm not treated as, it's a little left of field how we're doing this. And they're just like, okay, we're down. I never once, I kept expecting, like I said, to get the cease and desist letter, Bryan, you still okay?
It's been a labor of love for sure, but it's been rewarding at every step. I remember that first phone call we had when you said, well, these are all the people that I want to read on the audiobook for The Heart is Deceitful. And I thought, okay, well, that's going to be a tall order. And then one by one, over the last several months, they've all delivered their stories. And so, I mean, everybody's delivered their part here, and it's been a really rewarding experience.
And the thing that even kicks it up is we have to remember that we started this before COVID. So I was in the studio in February. When, do you know the date, Jayme? I can look on pictures because I have those. We have it documented.
I can look in my calendar real quick. I'll pull it up.
It was something in February. But it was before COVID.
Yes, it was.
And
I think it was right before COVID. February 26th.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That's just a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So not long after, it was like lockdown. And I remember when I was there, San Francisco, actually, when I was in New York, San Francisco, where I live, declared a state of emergency. And I was thinking, man, maybe I'm better off in New York City, but turned out not to be like that. But people have turned in their stories from all over the world.
That's incredible.
Do you guys, Bryan, how would you normally do something like this? Like what, so maybe we can talk a little bit about what that's been like for you guys to record in lockdown.
Yeah, that's one thing I did want to ask, because this is the biggest interview as far as multiple people that I've done for the podcast. I'm curious, and we have representatives from all kinds of different fields, and I'm just really interested in how this has impacted your work. So yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Bryan and Jayme, I'm curious how that has impacted you and what you're doing right now.
I'll let Jayme take this one.
Oh, okay. Well, Bryan and I have different things going on because I don't work at Blackstone anymore. But basically what happened in the shutdown was we started remote engineering people. So I started working from my apartment. I got a whole computer set up with a laptop and a talkback mic and a mic pre, and people started setting up home studios. Now, a lot of our regular narrators that work all the time, they already had home studios, but then a bunch of people started building them. And I'm assuming that a lot of the people who were working on this project, they either had access to a studio, had some recording equipment, and sort of have gone through this process of having remote engineers, remote directors working with them over Zoom like this, making sure that everything is coming out okay.
Winsome, how about you? How's this pandemic impacted your work?
Well, I recorded Baby Doll for The Heart is Deceitful Above All Things from my home studio, which is like so many people's home studios, in a closet with blankets around it. And I used Source Connect, which is an online platform that basically makes the engineer and you have a very clear connection. And it was wonderful. I already had most of the equipment, but I didn't have the Source Connect. And so how it's impacted me is, and I think so many performers during this time, is that we've had to become technologically adept and facile enough that doesn't throw a whole lot of nerves at us right as we're trying to be performers. I mean, one of the luxuries of being a narrator and having somebody like Jayme or Bryan right there at your side is that you can just relax, and all you have to do is submit to the performance and allow yourself to become a vessel. But if you're the person managing your Source Connect, once you have that going, the engineer is then taking over. But I recorded another audiobook from my home studio, and I think many people are doing that. So we're wearing many hats, and I think that's how it's affected us. Is that we have to get quite good enough at the tech that it's not impinging at all on our performances. And so, I mean, that's the way of the day. I remember 20 years ago, a friend of mine who is a theater reviewer saying, now I have to, in addition to writing for the magazine he wrote for Time Out New York, I have to also, write for the web and do social media. And I'm not getting paid anymore. It's just, I have to do 2 jobs. And I think that's kind of everybody right now. I mean, no matter what side of the business you're on, everybody's doing more jobs than they used to do, and that both gives us more power but also requires a different kind of attention and engagement.
That's a good point. And there is a difference, as we've seen, with people who are doing it from home. I mean, we've had to re-record a couple of people because there wasn't somewhere to kind of spot them, And like we're saying, having somebody say, "Oh, you changed this word and that word," where it's so easy to do. Like the word says that, and you've changed it to which, or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can relate. I mean, totally. I'm a high school teacher, but I'm wearing 2 hats, and it's been we're just kind of thrown into it, and we all, no matter what career path we have, we are just doing the best we can, hopefully. And it seems like I'm curious, like some of the creative works that are going to come out of this time period. I guess we'll see. So, Laura, Nicole, how about you two? I know you work together with your writing and your business. How has this impacted you two?
We're just selling penis bones out the window.
I hope so.
Because I don't dare go out the door anymore.
Somebody on a Zoom call, we had this guy. He told me how he shared how a Tinder date picked up his penis bone and used it as a Coke spoon. That's, first of all, he was like mortified that the guy would do that, and the guy was more mortified when he said, "Well, that's a penis bone, a raccoon penis bone." And it's like, wait, not a Coke spoon? It's like, what,
It seems appropriate. Yeah, it seems appropriate.
Yeah. But what we're doing, I'm in the process of, I don't like the word memoir. What would you call it, Nicole?
I would call it a book. No, seriously. Laura's writing a book, and it's her life story, and it's, as a writer, she's at the top of her form. This is what is such a special joy. It's writers are the wrong people to ask about the problems of the pandemic, because being able to keep the door shut and keep people away, is considered a plus, not a minus. And so it's beneficial for writers, really. Writing is not a social art. Even when writers are collaborating, it's not a social art.
Sure, yeah, definitely.
So we take advantage of this time. I've been working on manuscripts, and Laura's been working on her book as well. And of course, we're able to coordinate everything that we need to do as we proceed.
That's
for
great.
Us, it's easy. We don't have to show our faces.
I love it. Yeah.
It's for folks in other professions that have to deal hands-on with people like Bryan and Jayme and Winsome, of course, that have had to become even more creative. We're lucky. We're not challenged to become more creative. We're creative enough. Thank you.
Oh, that's genius. Yeah. Yeah, and Nicole's completing her book on the Tao Te Ching. Did I say it right?
You said it right, dear. Yes, indeed. During this time, I've written an English language version of the Tao Te Ching, working from a book that breaks down English meanings for every single character of all 81 poems.
Phenomenal.
And I'm not literate in Chinese. I can't do a translation, but I can create an English version if I've been given a range of meanings for each word in the original Chinese. And so that manuscript is one that I've completed now.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah,
I can't wait to check that out. That's so cool. And Laura, I'm so excited because that was one of the questions. I mean, and I think a lot of your fans have the same question. You're probably annoyed with this question, is like, when are you going to put something new out? And I'm so excited that you are working on something because, you know, I love everything you write. So this is going to be incredible. Can we,
Nicole, how many, where's it at right now? How big is it?
Well, folks will see the right material from the larger manuscript that's being generated now, but there's, we're at, well, at this point we have about 700,000 words. And
oh, wow.
we will.
And Sarah was what, 50?
45. 45. You
Okay.
know, so it's about 15 or 16 times longer than Sarah.
Like Obama's multiple volumes, yeah.
It's going to be huge, but what we'll put together is something that works within a smaller, more focused context, and there's going to be other material for other projects and other releases too. This has all been, Laura had stopped writing for a long time, and when it finally kicked back in again, it just has been coming out in this beautiful torrent of coherent and meaningful and unforgettable prose that's going to knock people out when they see it.
Oh, Nicole.
That's the truth.
That's lovely.
That's the truth.
The way it happens is our process is I write. I start hearing it. It's sort of like I use this metaphor of or example of, you know, the film Alive, where the soccer team is stranded. They have a plane crash and they're in the Alps or the Andes, and they forget about eating one another, but they realize they have to try to hike out. No one's going to come to rescue. And I was waiting for someone to rescue me for a long time. Like, could someone else write it for me? Or the documentary was necessary just so I can even be heard, because it wasn't even possible to be heard. And so much of my life is finding a workaround to be heard, right? Part of the creation of authors was always as a workaround because I felt impossible to be heard. So once I understood I was now able, people were actually asking me instead of telling me. Once it was where I was able to kind of push back against the dominant culture narratives about me, and I felt, okay, now I can do this. So, and it was awakening a muscle, because remember, I also went through a trial, and I lost that trial because I had a lawyer that meant well, but he was in over his head. They had a big team and we didn't have anything like that. And the Authors Guild got involved and helped me with that. But I felt the gate go down, the gate. I was like, I'm done. I mean, it still makes me cry to this day. I felt it was like the storm gate. I was like, I'm done. I really literally, you know, where you hear it and that slam down, it was that. And so the fact that it was able to lift, I just didn't know that would happen. And Nicole really holds me each time. Because every time it is like I said in the Alive, where I get a piece done, a section, and I never know what is the nugget. What does this need to tell me? What am I trying to find? Because that's how I find out the truth of what's inside, of what happened after I was outed as JT. Everyone and their mother was coming, here's a book deal, tell us. And it was very unsatisfying for them to hear my answer, which is, I don't know. And if that's what was the trial was about, because I wouldn't let someone else make a film. where they were going to define me when I couldn't even say what it was. And I wouldn't accept or do a book deal where I couldn't say it. And I knew I needed to find out by going back to the work. Again, it was like trying to find the right person to do Sarah. It takes what it takes. There's a poem, a line from Robert Penn Warren that goes, "The secret subject of any story worth telling is time, but you can never say its name." And if you don't fucking get that, you'll get slammed in your face again and again. I find, at least for me, if I try to do my will, it just will not work. A has to follow B. It's like storytelling. A has to follow B, has to follow C. They have to connect. And it's the same thing for me, when I write a story, I write, and I get to what it is, I send it to Nicole. She sends back an edit. I work on it, and then finally I get to where I know it's a final. Like I find out something I didn't know was there before. But then it's like now I'm back in the Swiss Alps. So there's a scene in Alive where the music is crescendoing. They're gonna get up one of their frostbite, and they're eating tofu that's actually the bodies of their compatriots and their soccer team, and they're cannibals, and they're about to see the little Swiss village, and they get up to the top of the mountain, and it's more fucking Swiss Alps. So that's what it feels like, because I've been working on this for a very long time, where I'm like, oh shit, now I've got to start another one. But little by little, we've actually gotten past. I mean, we've I'm starting to see the Swiss village. I mean, right, Nicole?
Oh yes. There's the thing is really falling to shape now, and it doesn't have much further to go. It's very interesting. I've become very attracted to the music of Richard Strauss recently, and I realized that Laura is doing the same thing that Richard Strauss did. When he started out as a composer, made a big splash in the 1880s and 90s, writing orchestral pieces that brought to life iconic figures of literature or folk tales. Don Juan, the great lover; Till Eulenspiegel, the prankster and troublemaker; Don Quixote, the dreamer and buffoon; Zarathustra, the philosopher. These are all aspects of his own personality. He was dramatizing ego images with this music. And then Strauss went on to make art about himself. Ein Heldenleben. He is the hero of Ein Heldenleben. He is the subject of the Sinfonia Domestica, which is about his domestic life with his wife and his son. He and his wife are the subjects of the opera Intermezzo that he wrote the libretto for, as well as composed in the 1920s. And it strikes me as a very healthy progression to go from animating ego images to, if you like, mythologizing or creating art about oneself. This is the reason why Laura was a little fussy about what to call the book that she's writing now. And she's quite literature is what she's writing now, just as all of it has been literature. But it's not about animating an ego image anymore, which is what JT LeRoy was. All of her own feelings and values and ideals expressed in a different kind of metaphor, but all there point by point by point. And now she can deal with these subjects directly as herself and about herself. And this will be only more instructive and more beneficial and more interesting to people. So it's a really joyful thing to see, a very healthy and profound progression as an artist. And to be able to witness that is a privilege.
Oh, Nicole.
That's great. So I think what I'm hearing from all this is like the books taking as long as they did to become audiobooks. It was necessary to have that space and time for it to come out at the right time, and it clearly was. And so in Laura, I think we've talked about this before, about the craving of certainty that we all have on some level, but others more so sometimes. So I can't imagine being like bothered constantly about when is this going to happen. I need certainty for myself when I can read your next work, but you're the one making it. So well worth the wait whenever this comes out. I know people are going to be so happy.
Well, I think it also is an important message for all creatives out there to know the world says, do it now. I mean, I remember my first agent, I was given a very high-powered literary agent, not Bill Clegg, when I was first outed, and he said to me, well, no one's going to care about you in 7 months. And I said, well, people didn't care about me 7 months ago, so what do I care? What do I lose, right? And I have learned the importance of the right fit, because even about documentaries, I knew internally, I knew someone was going to lift the rock off of me and make a documentary. Like, I just had that very strong, I knew it. Okay. And I knew my job was, again, the Cinderella foot, to wait for that, that title, that movie, the vampire movie, Let the Right One In. I was like, God, please let me let the right one in. In my desperation, please don't let me kind of let the wrong one in. And I was constantly, I was approached by so many people, and it was like, when Jeff Feuerzeig came along, I was like, oh yeah, no, he is definitely the right one. And it wasn't my time frame. I wanted it right away, but I was not ready. And it's kind of like the universe making me ready. It is such a wonderful fit with Blackstone. I keep waiting for them to turn into the mean court. Well, I won't say mean, but more like to come back and just say, you know what, you are just too fucking out there. This is just like, gotta stop. Because I mean, it's been complex. It's been complex. We've had people who've had different things come up in their lives, and we've added stories that weren't available before. And they have not accommodated my fantasy of mean, cruel TSA agent,
Everybody knows Blackstone is the top of the line when it comes to this sort of thing. Michelle Obama did her book with them, and they have done nothing but been supportive and encouraging and creative and responsive throughout this whole process. It's just been a joy.
That's great. Well, I think this might be a good.
Guys, I would just say for the record right there that Jayme did that book with Michelle Obama, not Blackstone.
Oh
wow.
Thank you so much, Brian, for clearing that up. I'm sorry. Congratulations, Jayme, dear.
Oh, thank you so much. But
I love that audiobook. That's great.
But Blackstone has done a lot of really, really wonderful work in the industry and is well respected.
Great.
Well, great. So I encourage everyone to go out and get Sarah right now. It's available. And then within a matter of months, we're going to have The Heart is Deceitful above all things. And that is going to be a real treat, especially hearing all the different people involved in that project. Okay, so I want to thank you all for your time. I know we could probably go on for hours. I know I could.
Well, I just want to say one thing.
Yes.
In the movie, in author the JT LeRoy story, I say how I filmed Sarah, and I always felt it would be a movie, and I think it will be. Like Gus Van Sant was going to make it, and then someone else. Right. Thank God it didn't happen with that other person. But I really feel like listening to Winsome. She films it with her words. She's filming it. She's taking it to that other level. And I've heard from people who are dyslexic and have not been able to read the book. Okay, so they love everything around. They've been able to absorb it. One man tells me how his boyfriend would read it to him, but he really wanted to be with it, and how finally he's able to listen to it and receive it. And that's just, he says it's filmed, and that is just so I don't even have the words for it. I mean, Winsome just, and it's funny because when we connected Winsome, I remember you guys, was it Brian? You guys were like, oh man, we've been trying to work with her. Right, Brian?
Yeah, and it ended up being a great connection.
I sent Bryan some chocolate, so he's busy with the chocolate.
It's funny what you say, Laura, about cinema, because I've listened to the audiobook of Sarah, and so did my husband, and he was talking about how your kind of molding of time is so incredible, and how you break down a moment that is, probably a second or two in real life, but it might take 3 or 4 pages. There's the bit where the lemon goes flying out of the mouth and onto the floor, and JT goes flying off the lap. It's this wild comedy, but that's broken down beat by beat so precisely, and in hearing it, it does become cinematic. And I mean, I'm flattered that might be part of my work. I think it's also just part of the way you write, that when you can take these words and these images that you give them and take them in a kind of the slightly slower time that happens when you listen to something rather than when you read it. Because when we read, the images come flying by us like driving in a car. But when you listen to something, it's maybe a little bit more like taking a walk through a book. And so anyway, one of the things that I was fascinated with in this cinematic quality in listening to it is also the degree to which the comedy comes apart from the emotional devastation that you're presenting with all of these characters and their intricate lives. But there's so much physical comedy, and you really get that when you listen to it in a way that is, incredibly cinematic.
I would just add here very quickly that Winsome also understands the intimacy that's necessary in something like this, especially this text, which has a first-person narrator. So there is a person talking to you all of the time, and regardless of what other voices may be lapsed into in order to create dialogue, there is a deep intimacy that a listener has to feel, and that's the kind of thing you normally get in film when you can look in an actor's eyes. That's what happens as you listen to her speak. You're looking into her eyes.
God, that's so beautiful. That's beautiful. Yes, yeah, and that's exactly it. Yeah, you're feeling the hug, the fingerprints. And I think that would be the next step with this is I think it could not be done in a movie back when it was first, and I was pushing because it was my will. And when it is correct, I mean, Nicole and I have talked about it. We definitely think it needs to be done by a woman. Nicole, do you want to talk about that?
Well, we could talk a bit about that if you want, hon.
I just think it's interesting. I mean,
It treads on such dangerous ground about gender and sexuality and everything that it becomes very easy to get stuck into the wrong pigeonhole. When you read the book, you realize that Laura's gone out of her way to make it pigeonhole proof. You can't say anything about the character's identity or sexuality, really, because it is just an open situation that changes as different things present themselves to the narrator. And there is an instinct we've found, especially among the men who have been attracted to the material and have proposed to adapt it in various sorts of ways, to reduce it into something that's more recognizable and that diminishes the emotion and the pathos that's in the story. It is the very fluidity and undefinability of the narrator that makes it meaningful. He's not a teenage queen. It's something much, much deeper than that.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I really thought there was a great marriage of artistry in this project. I think you can look at writing and say, here are the rules of writing. This is how you construct a sentence. Here are the beats. This is when you have to have your denouement. And when people are like, but I just have this story I need to tell, perhaps I break some rules, perhaps this is a little unusual, but here's my story. And it comes from a place without a drive to create something technically correct or without ego. This is just my art. And then you hand it off to someone to help you create it. So in this situation, we go from author to narrator, and we've got Winsome. And instead of saying, here are the technicalities of acting, here is how you do character voices, this is what has to be done, we find someone who, without ego, releases themselves to the words. And you've got two great artists sort of working together, even though they weren't in the same room. But both of these endeavors can be done in a technically perfect way. Here is how it's done, and it can feel a little sterile. And when you allow artists to say, no, this is how I need to do it, this is what my body is telling me this is, then you get something that's really unique and powerful, and so lacking in ego that you forget that people had to do work, that it just becomes something outside of them.
And that's it right there. I mean, you're talking about just like the effortless, like people think they can write, or they can do this, or they can do that. When I think people think that, that's when the true artist is working, because they're so good that it looks easy. I mean, like the people that I've talked to, I've said, oh, your book was so quick to get through it. I loved it. And it was just, I read it in 2 nights. And they like to hear that, but at the same time, it's the word by word, the painstaking, like the amount of effort that went into making it come off as looking like it was easy. That's the true artist right there.
And I would add to what Jayme said. Winsome narrates this book in an accent that is not her own. And so to achieve that level of naturalness, of genuine storytelling, when that's not your native accent, it's really, really impressive.
And it wasn't doing JT, it was how does this sound to you? You need to make this character, which is Cherry Vanilla, which doesn't really have a name. I mean, he doesn't have a name, and how he sounds needs to be organic to you. And how did you do that, Winsome? How did you find your voice?
I suppose I allowed it to come. You asked me, you said, would you be interested in recording this? And I remember I was actually in Vancouver working on Supergirl. I was playing a Kryptonian witch. And from the hotel room in Vancouver, I recorded something on my phone and sent it. And I didn't listen to anything in advance. I read it how I felt it. And it was only after that then I started listening to Author. And I mean, I watched Author and I heard JT's voice in its various incarnations. And that I allowed that to touch me. But I had already kind of arrived at my own version of that narrative voice right at the beginning. And then for the various characters in it, I mean, the work with Nicole was incredibly helpful. And Jayme, I'm incredibly touched by your use of the word egoless, or lack of ego, because that is something that I truly aspire to as an artist, is to allow myself to kind of be a channel for those voices that are bigger than I am. And that's the joy of it. And that's the joy of getting to touch the flame, somebody else's flame, and have it light in me. But for the other characters in the book, working with my idea of play and fun and difference, practicality. Some of them are men, some are women. Sometimes where they come from in the country is specified, and so those that informed. And I mean, I love accents. I love working with accents and voices and play. Like with my daughter, we talk in a million accents all day long. Like that's my favorite thing to do. And to get really precise about it, so that it's not about a show, like a party trick, but really like, what might it be like if this is how I was? How would I be? What kinds of things would I say? And so it's like living many lives in one life. And so this is why, as I said right at the beginning, it was a singular honor to be chosen to do Sarah, because I mean, the depths of life and human experience that you touch in this, Laura, are so profound, and it's just such a wild trip to be able to allow them to come through my body. So thank you. Thank you.
There's this wonderful line that David Milch, who is my mentor, who created the HBO series Deadwood, among other works. He says, resting transparently on the grace that gave you rise. And that to me describes your performance, is resting transparently on the grace that gave us rise, right? And that is exactly what Jayme said, and that describes what this whole experience. It's just allowing it to be of itself, which is what I always wanted and dreamed of, and I feel very #blessed, you know. #humbled.
That's
I
great.
was just thinking about a couple things that people were saying, like talking about how the protagonist in Sarah can't be pigeonholed, and Winsome talking about all the different voices that get to be voiced, men and women, and how in so many other aspects of acting, Winsome would be told, you can do this, you can't do this. These are roles that you can play, and these are roles that you can't play, whether or not it's because of age or gender or any other aspects, you know, hair color, even, whatever. And there's something kind of magical about an audiobook where there's no visual component. And so any person, no matter what they look like, can be that character. And then within that book, unlike any other acting, you are every character. No one says, well, you don't get to voice the men because you're a woman. And it kind of makes Sarah the perfect book to be made into an audiobook, because you know, anyone can be anything when it comes to audiobooks. There is no pigeonholing in that. Winsome did have to be everybody. There's sort of this openness that I love, and this ability for an actor to do every role they were ever told they're not allowed to do.
Containing multitudes, absolutely. And that was the wonderful thing that Bryan has allowed us to do with the Heart, is bringing people that aren't actors. There are a few that are creatives and are very successful in other fields, but have this inner spark where they understand the story, and that they can bring there's just something in their voice that maybe there's a technical that is not there, but there's this high-pitched, heartbreaking availability to what's being communicated that resonates over a technical skill, you know? So they've been very #patient and allowing us to cast a wide net and make it available, and an extended family. So, Nicole, you want to add something?
I think you've said it all, dear. The only thing I would mention is that I remember Orson Welles saying that each of us contains within ourselves a murderer, a saint, a monarch, a slave. And the actor's job is to push all the other parts of the self aside and let that one part come out, so that people can see what that kind of person is actually like. And with the audiobook, Winsome does that and shows the other faces of the other characters as well. And that's quite an extraordinary thing. You don't see that very often. And that's what makes this particular audiobook such a tour de force.
That's great. Well, does anyone have anything else they want to add before we conclude this amazing conversation?
Bryan, when can I bother you again? Bryan?
Oh, I expect on Monday, right?
Yeah, put down the chocolate, dude. Well, she does project. Yeah. All right, Monday, what time?
You heard it here, folks, right on this podcast.
This was all a guise, a trick to get Bryan talking to Laura again.
Oh yeah, because I'm so hard to get a hold of. Nicole, Laura, yeah, let's talk on Monday.
Oh man, I love you guys.
Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. It was a blast, and
Enjoy.
Thank you, Kyler.
thank you. Yeah, thank you
so
for
much, Tyler.
creating this beautiful piece of work. I'm so thrilled that people that truly cared and loved it, put so much effort, and it shows, and it's incredible. So thank you so much.
And Kyler, just thank you. Yeah, this was really wonderful. And I want to thank Winsome for taking time from your day. Nicole, thank you. Jayme, Bryan, thank you. I'll have the stalkers leave outside. Do you want them to hang around a little more so you can keep feeling like you're in the crown?
I'll find you first.
No, this is really cool. And Kyler, just man, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Kylie, dear.
It's an honor. Okay, I'll be in touch. So thank you so much. You all have a great weekend, and
Bye, everybody.
have a great one. We'll see you.
Party on, Garth.
Thanks so much, Kyler. Bye-bye.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Nice meeting
Pleasure
you all.
with you.
Okay.
Love
Bye.
you. Thank you,
too.
Jayme.
You're welcome, Laura.
Bye.